Tonight, the Senate gears up for President Trump's second impeachment trial.
We've never had a former president who is going to go through an impeachment trial.
Why some say the whole thing is unconstitutional. Plus,
even though there's a clear discrepancy between the demand and the supply, that will get better.
How the White House is attempting to speed up COVID vaccinations. And why the murder rate is soaring in the United States and what's being done to bring it down. All this and more tonight on Fake Nation.
A big week, big impeachment trial in Washington. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. History unfolding on Capitol Hill as the Senate kicks off the former president's second impeachment trial tomorrow.
House managers will argue that while former President Trump was still in office, he committed an impeachable offense of inciting an insurrection. On January 6th, he used a rally speech to encourage thousands of his supporters to protest on the Hill. That led to what became a deadly riot.
And joining us now for tonight's top story, CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, how's President Trump's legal team planning to respond to those charges?
Well, President Trump's defense plans to argue that it is unconstitutional to impeach a president that has already left office. Now, 45 Republican senators agree with this, including Senator Lindsey Graham, meaning a conviction is unlikely.
The impeachment articles, I think, are unconstitutional because the president is in Florida. He's not in office. Impeachment for a president requires the Chief Justice to preside over the trial. He's not at the trial because President Trump is not the president. So this is not process. The Constitution, I think, has been flagrantly violated.
Graham told CBS's Face the Nation, it's not a question of how the trial ends, it's a question of when.
The outcome is really not in doubt. That doesn't mean what happened on January the 6th was okay. It means this impeachment in the eyes of most Republicans is an unconstitutional exercise. Right. The president's behavior, in my view, is not a crime, but he can be charged with one if people think he committed it because he's now a private citizen.
While fellow GOP Senator Pat Toomey told CNN he believes the trial is constitutional, Toomey hasn't decided how he will vote.
You did have 45 Republican senators vote to suggest that they didn't think it was appropriate to conduct a trial. So you can infer how likely it is that those folks will vote to convict. I disagreed with their assessment. I think it is constitutional. I think it's clearly constitutional to conduct a Senate trial with respect to an impeachment. In this case, the impeachment occurred prior to the president's leaving office.
Democratic impeachment managers will try to prove that Trump is solely responsible for last month's attack because he refused to concede the election. His words incited the riot, and he was slow to condemn it.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The president was taking steps to make it worse, not better.
Arrested rioters like Jacob Chansley petitioned President Trump for a pardon before he left office. Now, ABC News reports Chansley's attorney argues his client believes his actions came at the request of the president.
We will remove them from office one way or another.
The defense is expected to argue President Trump's speech ahead of the Capitol siege is protected by the First Amendment.
When you look at the facts, many people had already planned to attack the Capitol before he ever spoke.
Lead attorney Bruce Castor says they also plan to use Democrats' own words against them as part of their defense.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd.
Now, President Trump's defense attorneys rejected a request that Trump appear in person to testify under oath at the trial. 17 Republican senators would have to join every Democrat senator in voting to convict President Trump in order to bar him from ever running for federal office again, which, as I said at the top, seems very unlikely right now. John, Jenna?
All right, Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Hans von Spakovsky is a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, welcome back to Faith Nation. You know, Republicans say it's unconstitutional to impeach a president after he's left office. Democrats say there is a precedent. They point to the 1876 impeachment of President Grant's Secretary of War convicted after leaving office. Hans, your thoughts. Can President Trump also be convicted post-presidency?
No, the Constitution, I think, is very clear on this. Senator Graham is correct. Senator Toomey is wrong. The impeachment clause was put in there as a way of removing current sitting federal officers. It does not apply to private citizens. The one precedent that they point to in 1876 was very controversial at the time, and you'll note it has never been repeated in the entire history of the United States. It's particularly, we know it's unconstitutional for this reason, too. Remember, no one's talking about the fact that the Constitution prohibits bills of attainder. What that means is that Congress cannot hold trials to go after private citizens bypassing the judicial system. And that's exactly what they're doing right now.
You know, Hans, when we talk about precedents, what kind of precedents do you think this trial will set going forward?
This sets a terrible precedent because it means that in the future, for example, if the Republicans regain control of the House or Senate, they could potentially impeach prior presidents such as Barack Obama and others like that, or Bill Clinton, for example, for the pardons that he issued to Puerto Rican terrorists, or Mark Rich, the fugitive financier. They could impeach them because that's the precedent that's being established.
Hans, we know that this trial will look different than the last. John Roberts will not be sitting in charge.
Right.
What can we expect as far as a template? Is there a template or standard that they're following here?
Well, they're obviously making up the rules to favor them any way they want. For example, they apparently sent a letter to former President Trump's lawyers saying that if he failed to appear as a witness, they would hold that against him in deciding whether he's guilty or not. That violates basic standards against self-incrimination and forcing someone to testify under the Fifth Amendment. Again, the Democrats are ignoring that. The Fifth Amendment was put in to try to prevent those kind of procedures they're implementing, which resemble those of the Star Chambers of England of the 1600s.
Yeah. Just about 30 seconds left here, Hans. But today, the Trump defense team called this nothing more than political theater. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think it is. I think this is unfortunately resembles the kind of show trials that Joseph Stalin staged in the 1930s against political opponents and people he thought would interfere with his power.
All right, Hans von Spakovsky, we are out of time. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Hans. Well, while much of the Capitol is focused on impeachment, the White House says the president's priority is his $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan.
He will not spend too much time watching the proceedings of any time over the course of this week. He will remain closely in touch with Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, a range of officials on the Hill about his plan, and that's exactly what they want him to do, is to remain focused on that.
Last week, both Democrat-controlled chambers of Congress cleared the way for the relief measure to pass without Republican support. The White House is hoping to have something signed by March 15th. That is when extra unemployment insurance benefits from a prior relief measure expire.
New data shows one of the more contagious variants of the coronavirus is rapidly spreading through the United States.
The White House COVID-19 response team says that means the country remains in a serious situation, even with recent positive trends we've seen. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us to explain. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, one of those trends is a drop in cases over the last 4 weeks, and that is, of course, good news. But experts warned in order to keep that downward trend, people need to keep up their protection and also their guard up as well.
We must continue to drive these cases down.
This past week's 119,000 COVID cases represented a drop of nearly 20% from the week before. Still, 83,000 Americans remain hospitalized with the virus last week. and deaths increased to more than 3,200 per day.
We are continuing to watch these data closely, and although hospital admissions and cases are consistently dropping, I'm asking everyone to please keep your guard up.
9% of Americans have received at least one dose of a vaccine. Pfizer is ramping up its production, cutting the time it takes to make a batch from 110 days to just 60.
Following a single dose of either the Moderna or the Pfizer, you had a response that gave you a neutralizing antibody above the threshold of protection. So it did give some degree of protection.
Another major concern is how variants of the virus are now sweeping through the country. One new study suggesting cases of the highly contagious UK variant are potentially doubling every 10 days.
Thus far, no evidence that it is less virulent. Sometimes when viruses mutate to spread more efficiently, they become less virulent, but we do not have any data to indicate that that is in fact happening with SARS-CoV-2.
And as we begin to move beyond phase 1 of vaccinations, there's a call to add teachers to the priority list. In fact, unions say that should be done before kids return to the classroom. John, Jenna?
All right, thanks, Ben. Why sanctions could be a sticking point on the Biden administration's road to restoring the Iran nuclear deal. The details right after this.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
It's what starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The Iran nuclear deal revived. President Biden tells Iran it must comply with the original terms of the 2015 nuclear deal if it wants the U.S. to end crippling sanctions.
That's right, Jenna. The president also adding another condition. Only if and when that happens will America rejoin the agreement. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more. Eric?
The president wants Iran to honor the 2015 nuclear deal. Now, that's ironic, because it was the U.S. under the leadership of President Trump that first reneged on the deal and then imposed sanctions on Iran, even though a UN nuclear watchdog group said that Iran was in compliance with the agreement at the time. Now Biden wants to kind of turn back the clock to 2015. But one expert I spoke to says he'll first have to be a bit more clear about his goals where Iran is concerned.
Will the U.S. lift sanctions first in order to get Iran back to the negotiating table?
No.
They have to stop enriching uranium first.
While the president is standing strong with no signs of flexibility,
So is Iran. The country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, saying if they want Iran to return to its commitments, America must completely lift the sanctions. President Obama, along with other international leaders, signed the original nuclear deal with Iran in 2015. After his 2016 election win, President Trump called it a bad deal, pulling out of it in 2018, while also placing harsh economic sanctions on Iran to get it to greatly diminish its nuclear activity. Instead, a defiant Tehran began stockpiling and enriching uranium in order to get closer to its goal of a nuclear weapon power. Now Biden is working to return to the original deal, but only if Iran follows suit.
At some point, Biden may just have to make a tough call. Are you going back to the deal or not?
Michael O'Hanlon is a foreign policy expert with the Brookings Institution. He says this requires delicate maneuvering with a definitive end game.
Right now, I'm not sure in his public statements that President Biden is conveying a clear sense of where he wants to go. Just, having debates over who makes the first move feels a little too much like, middle school dating as opposed to international diplomacy. I would like a clearer sense of where Biden really wants to get to with his overall Iran policy. And I think the leaders in Iran would like that clarification as well.
O'Hanlon says he believes the best course for the U.S. could be renegotiating a longer-term deal, pointing out that some of the limits on Iran's nuclear activity negotiated in the original deal will expire in just 2 short years. And one issue is that many believe that Iran never fully complied to the 2015 deal. And O'Hanlon says if the president is not careful, this could turn into a lose-lose situation where if Iran says yes to his demands, that in that case, some will say, well, the deal was too easy to begin with. If Iran says no to the president's demands, then the U.S. is kind of in a state of limbo, even though those sanctions will remain. John, Jenna?
All right. Thank you, Eric. Here now for more, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, the Biden agenda with Iran is even more complicated in the larger scheme of the Middle East, particularly with regard to Israel, which now has more regional allies, a la the Abraham Accords. And David, where do you see this all going?
It's a very tricky situation that's going on right now in the Middle East and what Joe Biden is trying to do. Ultimately, one of the questions raised in Eric's piece is where does Iran exactly, or excuse me, where does the United States exactly want to go here? What does Biden want to do here? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, Biden wants to strike some sort of Iran nuclear deal. Again, the question is, it feels like a little bit like 2.0. It feels like, what's the new deal to be had? But at the same time, Biden's not going to do anything until Iran quits it and stops enriching uranium. And so that's where we're at now. So, right now it's kind of an Iranian purgatory, if you will, as it relates to what the United States is trying to do here.
David, let's talk about tomorrow's impeachment trial for former President Trump. What are you anticipating?
A lot of hot air. It's going to be political theater. Those were the words actually used by Donald Trump's lawyers today, and they're right. I mean, and even if you're a nonpartisan observer in all of this, it is political theater. Why is that the case? Because there's no drama here. I mean, in other words, the drama would be whether or not they're going to get 67 votes. They're not going to get 67 votes. So what's the point of all of this exactly? And I think the point is pretty clear. I mean, Donald Trump, Orange Man Bad, has been the boogeyman for Democrats for a very long time. They think they can politically win that way, and that's what they want to do here. There's no, it doesn't even make any sense to impeach a president has already left office. So,
David,
think about it. Yeah, go ahead.
David, you were just talking about the vote there. In the days after the Capitol attack, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Capitol mob was provoked by President Trump, yet he voted with the 45 other Republicans to dismiss the trial even before it began. How do you think he will vote this time around, and how much might his vote influence others in the GOP?
John, he's going to vote to acquit. He has to vote to acquit Donald Trump. Here's why. He just voted, like you mentioned, that he felt that the trial itself was unconstitutional. So how could you say that the trial is unconstitutional and then go ahead and say, well, now that there is a trial, I think he's guilty? No. If you think the trial on its face is unconstitutional, you've got to vote to acquit. McConnell's not going to vote guilty at all.
David, just real quickly here, do you think this could exonerate President Trump's reputation, or has it been permanently scarred?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer, Jenna. I think that's actually a really good question. Here's the truth. Inject truth serum inside me. I have no idea. I think his reputation is his reputation, and it was ever since he came gliding down that escalator. I think people had a view on Donald Trump, and I just think that everybody's cemented in, no matter impeachment or no impeachment, verdict, guilty or not.
All right, David Brody, we have to leave it there on this Monday. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks, David.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Coming up, the killer pandemic, how COVID is playing into America's murder rate when Faith Nation returns.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At cbn.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. cbn.com.
Welcome back. The nation saw a historic number of murders in 2020. One report says there's a direct connection to those figures and the effects of the pandemic.
CBN's Charlene Aaron takes a look at the numbers and shows how some churches are working to bring them down.
The study looked at crime rates in 34 cities ranging in size from New York to Norfolk, Virginia. In addition to the significant spike in homicides, researchers found how the pandemic may have contributed to the uptick in violence. While 2020 will be remembered for deaths due to COVID-19, this report also found an increase of 1,268 homicides over the year before. Statistics in urban areas tell an even bigger story. In Milwaukee, the total increased by 85%. Seattle saw a 63% rise, New York City 43%, and in Chicago, a city known for shootings, there were 278 more murders in 2020, an increase of 55%. While other crimes such as stolen cars and assaults rose as well, the report takes a close look at the connection between the homicide increase and the pandemic. It points to stress caused by isolation and extreme social restrictions, combined with economic loss and fear of death as possible factors.
We see even the healthiest of individuals with unlimited resources to coping strategies who are struggling.
Dr. Danny Holland of Regent University's School of Psychology leads the Institute for Violence Research. He says those stressors could lead people to violence and even murder.
Definitely could. It could push somebody over the edge. I think somebody who has a propensity for aggression or somebody who has a tendency to be aggressive in other different ways may go that direction.
Still, COVID isn't the only reason behind the increase. Extreme violence racked many cities following the police-related deaths of George Floyd and other African Americans. Criminologists also cite increased gang violence and a surge in gun ownership. Filmmaker Dimas Salaberios recently looked at the impact of surging violence in his film Chicago, America's Hidden War, which is under Oscar consideration. He describes its devastation on communities, particularly children.
We were walking through the streets. We asked for the addresses of the most dangerous blocks in Chicago. And we remember we met this little kid, his name was Quincy, who was sleeping under his bed. He said his house had bullet holes in it. He's seen bullets fly everywhere. We talked to another kid who was around 9 years old. He said, I watched in front of my face my cousin get beat up and shot twice and killed. Then the killer came back and shot him again. He said, I can never forget these things.
Salaberios says the church can make a difference.
This film shows guns being turned into pastors, people being baptized and quitting gangs.
Wow.
The church is the answer, and we can bring the homicides down, but we got to stay out there.
Meanwhile, experts say given these findings, it's crucial we get the pandemic under control. Then law enforcement, the church, and community leaders can work on ways to bring people together to stem violence across America. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thank you, Charlene. Well, a big night for the GOAT, as they call him. A Super Bowl recap when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Well, finally tonight, it is settled. There is a reason people call him the greatest of all time.
Or GOAT for short. Last night, Tom Brady took home another Super Bowl win and another Super Bowl MVP award. The quarterback led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a win against the Kansas City Chiefs. The score, 31-9. Brady threw 3 touchdown passes, 2 of them to his old New England teammate Rob Gronkowski. And even though this was his 10th Super Bowl, Brady says he is not thinking about retiring. And John, he's now won more Super Bowls than any player and also any team in the NFL. It's pretty incredible.
Impressive. Well, thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great night.